So just the first one on my list is bigger antennas and exterior installation. So is there anything that folks want to say about that? I mean, I guess I'll just start is that I know that there's Nebra has the outdoor ones that now have you can buy a separate cellular card, and those can just be, and then you can run power over Ethernet. So those are advantages in an outdoor situation for that particular hotspot. I got an official Helium hotspot, so I just bought another enclosure off of Amazon and got the, I think it was an official Helium from one of the partners, the antenna. Anyone else have advice on antennas and outdoor?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I did a lot of research on antennas. I bought one. It took a long time to figure out how to get it up for several reasons, for some strange reasons. I have some photos. Can I share my screen, JR?
Of course. Let me. You should still be able to share.
Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, so this is an antenna that Mike loaned to me, and this is what I was using up until Sunday. Mike, thank you for the loan. It clearly increased my earnings. It has made me thousands of dollars richer. I will be happy to buy you lunch in return at some point. And I'll get it back to you now that I'm not using it anymore. So this is the, where do I go? I'm trying, sorry, I got to advance. There we go. Let me go full screen, hang on. Okay, this is the new antenna. My wife and I spent 2.5 hours up on the roof Sunday getting it installed. The old antenna was 21 inches. This one is 96. Not fully done. I'm going to replace these straps with stainless steel straps. So, and some people have put their hotspots in waterproof containers and put them outside near the antenna. I chose to have mine inside and run the cable through the wall. So, you know, Lisa, I punched a hole in the wall of my house with a 4-foot-long drill bit, and you can see the cable running down here, and it goes down and into the second floor. I have a tall house. It's a 3-story, and this is a 6-foot chimney. So the bottom of this antenna is about 50 feet above grade. So it's only been 2 days, but here are the results. I took this snapshot a few hours before installing it. I was getting 8 witnesses. This is 2 days after. I'm getting 18. You can see the range to the north is particularly improved. I think this will probably improve too, because I mean, I can see one, I think this one. Can you see my cursor? Yeah, okay, so this one doesn't show up here. So I have a feeling I'm gonna pick up a few more. So if you are interested in drawing on what I learned about antennas when I was doing this research and figuring out how to strap it onto the chimney, I'm happy to help. I'd also like to say, Andrea and Mark, welcome. Happy to answer any questions. We're happy to have you on the email list. You can also check out if you've never heard of Discord, it's like a chat app. There's a great Helium community. They're very supportive. If you put any question, no matter how basic, you'll probably have an answer within 10 minutes. I want to thank Mike for the antenna loan. Doug, I'm interested in the use case in the parking garage, and I'm also interested in how the city is going to handle its crypto earnings, because we've thought about pitching the city on deploying hotspots in city-owned buildings to make the network more robust, get better coverage, but we never quite figured out what the city would do with the crypto earnings. So. Yeah, so I guess that's what I've got to say. Any questions on antennas?
Yeah, let me pop in for 1 second.
Sure.
I have the original hotspot with that little winky-dink antenna on the back of it, and it's located in my attic about midway between the 2 sloping roof and the floor of the attic. And it's going all over, it's getting all over New Haven. from that. And the name of the game in the antenna is height. The higher your antenna, the better. Now you can put a longer antenna, it'll give you some gain, but if you got a long cable, you're gonna get some loss on the cable. So you have to be looking at how much gain, how much loss. But if you can get your receiver like JR did outdoors with the antenna just an inch or two above it, that's like the ideal condition. And then at that point, it's just strictly height all the way. So anyway, just remember, height is the primary thing. You get loss on cable and you can get gain on various types of antenna designs. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, so I'll chime in there. I took Rich's advice early on and focused on the height over the antenna, and same thing. We're just using the existing antenna.
I have
what would happen if we added the antenna, but certainly it seems like
seems like we lost. I don't know if Ben was just breaking up for me, but looks like
sorry.
Muted.
Yeah. I muted just because I think Lisa was going to say something, but did you guys have trouble hearing me?
Yes, I had trouble hearing you, so I thought you were done, so I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, go for it.
So at my house, I have a similar setup as John does. I have an old a sailboat mast that is strapped onto my chimney. Similar, I started with the blaze orange straps and I tried to mute them down with some camouflage ones, but I didn't go the stainless route. I need to do that. And I was just trying to get the height, but also not extend the wire from the antenna to the hotspot. So I do have the hotspot inside a weatherproof container that is mounted also to the sailboat mast. And then another one that I recently installed is up in Mystic, and I was shocked how it's in Mystic and it reached all the way into Weekapaug, and that's just sitting on a kitchen table with the stock antenna. And I was just shocked at the range that it had, but it's again near the water and everything's flat and no obstruction and no trees. So that's been interesting. And just to touch a little bit on the helium tokens that we mine on the one on the top of the building is going to go towards funding student projects, and also it's earning quite well. So I think some student scholarships as well, and we'll see what happens there. But I mean, if you can imagine trying to, in a state university, trying to now convert crypto through the institutional advancement to get to a scholarship, that's going to take a year.
Can you hear me okay now, Lisa?
Yes.
So I should add weatherproof case for ours. And I have mine up. It is not formally mounted on this radio tower. We're just kind of having it on a rope pulley system. There's some tree guys threw some ropes up there. So I can hang Christmas lights and other things and pull it up and down, and it's been really effective. And one thing I was thinking, if you don't happen to have an old radio tower in your backyard, you might be able to have a similar system rigged in a tall pine tree, or any tree really. I mean, you probably want to keep it away from there'd be some interference from the trunk depending on where you hang it, but look up. To Rich's point, there might be opportunities to get higher than your own house in your backyard, so something to think about.
So I want to jump to the next topic, just unless there's a burning antenna thing. Okay, so I'm going to put that on hold. We can come back to it. Somebody asked about the HEX system and the placement and earnings and how things are regionalized. Does somebody want to take a stab at explaining that they described voodoo behind that. Did we stump the group?
I will say I've tried to understand it, and I'm at least several hours away from understanding it.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way. I thought I had my head wrapped around it, but then the resolutions of the hexes can change, and so it's interesting.
I can speak to some. I mean, I'll probably do a less bad job.
Why don't you get us started, and we'll
else,
forgive you for your mistakes.
So it starts with Uber, because Uber had to map lots of things and do it well and do it fast. So they set up a grid system that is not squares, but hexagons. And hexagons are better than squares because the center of every hexagon is the same distance from all its neighboring hexagons, which isn't true with squares. And they started out by modeling the Earth as a 20-sided shape. That's called an icosahedron, I learned. And then each icosahedron has 7 hexagons within it. And then each of those hexagons has 7 hexagons within that, and it goes down to 12 orders of resolution. And they picked one order of resolution. And if there's multiple hotspots within a single hexagon, then the earnings of those hotspots are decreased. And that's to promote better coverage. It's also to prevent people from gaming the system, because you could put a bunch of hotspots in a single room and they could ping off each other and you'd earn a lot. And they wanted to prevent that because people were doing it. It's also the case that they adjusted a little bit so that if you're like I said, if there's multiple hotspots within one hexagon, they cut down the earnings of all of them. But if there are hotspots surrounding you, they cut you a break and they increase the threshold at which your earnings get cut. So if all of your neighbors have hotspots, then it's okay that there's 2 in yours. You don't take a hit. I think there's also a way that they take into account density, because denser areas like downtown New Haven or midtown Manhattan, the radio propagation is going to be less. So in order to get good coverage, you will need a higher density. That's one thing I haven't figured out how they quite do yet. I've read the developer documentation, I've looked into the chain variables, and like I said, I still have more work to do. But so that's hopefully some of the basics on that.
Has anyone else, and none of us are experts, has anybody else explored this idea of the hex and the density and have insights to share beyond that? So a related question was...
JR, can I add one thing to that?
Sure, yep.
You can tell if your earnings are being cut by, if you go to explorer.helium.com and look up your hotspot, then and I think I can show this in one of my slides, or maybe you can find it, JR. You can look up a hotspot. There's a number, I think it's in like a green oval, and you want to be one. If you're not getting cut, it's 1.00. If it's less than 1, then that means your earnings are taking a hit because there's nearby hotspots, and that number can change like hourly.
If I can just chime in 1 second, I did have a hotspot I didn't have a home for yet. So I had a friend of mine who lives in Manhattan. So she was on the 12th floor of a building. And so she took it home with her, set it up, plopped it in the window, and it started all these, there's like 189 witnesses. This thing's gonna do great. Well, this does not do great because the density is so severe, and the scaling factor is a 0.2 instead of this 1.0. So the score that you get is so it dropped down to a 0.2, and it does much worse than kind of our lone wolves up, that started out in northern Hamden. So I would not say the closer you are, the denser the area, the more hotspots there are. I mean, it maybe generates 3 to 4 tokens a day compared to ones in northern Hamden with only 3 witnesses that have a full score of a 1.0 getting 10.
So that relates to the second part of the question, which was strategies for maximizing HNT production or earning. So one is placement, of course. Was there anyone else that wanted to chime in on what some other strategies might be? Well, in fact, they say reward scaling. So maybe that's something even deeper. I assume that by scaling, it's like how it's scaled to your hotspot when you success transactions. But if there's some other reward scaling I'm not thinking of, jump in. Nick, are you saying something?
Not so much in terms of the reward scaling, but just in terms of like what that means for the everyday user. So, I mean, we can all go on to the helium.place and look at like the ideal positioning. You can see the different reward tiers and the ideal location within the, I guess, parameters set forth by Helium. The thing that, like, the question that begs to me is like how we can lay out a game plan for deploying any additional hotspots. So I'm sure that folks that have hotspots out there are interested in placing more, or like, sharing them with their family, or maybe, looking to deploy them at other locations within their own business, maybe satellite campuses for Southern, or, my question is, how do you guys look at the future deployment of these and how they are going to be?
We're losing you, Nick. I think we might have lost you, if you can hear us. All right, so I think we, if anybody else has insight, we can jump. I'll text Nick and let him know he's dropped.
I mean, I've talked to Nick a little bit, JR.
Yeah.
He's curious about, I think, what does Helium call the hosts, the people who begins with a P?
Patreon?
There is a name. Patrons. Yeah, the patrons, right?
Patrons,
So like
yeah.
Nick's kind of thinking about like being a patron, right? And how he could buy a bunch of units and then have some kind of sharing agreement with other folks. So I believe that's the direction of this conversation. There's other people in our network who have been thinking about like how we deploy these on every billboard, throughout the state. And so I think there are other folks that are thinking about how you might go beyond just the onesie twosie domestic or home-based installation and really scale it up quickly. So I think that's the context.
Yeah, and so I guess things that
I'm not sure if there was a question.
Yep. Okay, well, we'll see if he comes back. I'm interested in just sort of the prediction of if earnings are really going. So are we going to be past the heyday pretty soon as all these hotspots deploy and halving happens, and then what happens? It's hard exactly to know, but that's a question in my mind.
I'll speak to that. I do not think that we're past the heyday. I can't, this is not authority speaking, but it seems extremely unlikely that Helium is building this for Internet of Things projects only. I think that their end goal is to become a broadband telecommunications company, and that Helium is the way you move data around the world. And if that's the case, and they stick with the crypto limits, then it's not crazy to imagine multi-thousand-dollar values for single HNT. And so obviously if it all falls down a week after your miner arrives, don't come blaming me, but I think there's room to grow.
Yeah, I'd like to pop in on this for a second. Well, we were amazed to see it growing as fast as it did. And at one point we got greedy, thinking that we better take something out of it and guarantee our initial $400 investment. So we moved $3,000 out. So we got it in a special bank account that's connected up to all our Helium and our crypto stuff. And now we're deciding to let it ride, just let it go. And the notion is what's going to happen on August 1st on halving. So I went back and I looked at the Bitcoin, the history of Bitcoin and its halving. The first halving that Bitcoin did, everyone got scared and they sold off just before the halving. And then it came back and it just went way up. The next halving, nobody got scared. They just bought in. And I think that's what's going to happen on, I think all the crypto savvy people are not going to be scared by the upcoming August 1st date. And so I'm thinking that there's a very good chance that we're going to see, even though the number of tokens that we earn per day, but the value is going to go way up, even more than now. So I got my thing. That's what I'm believing at this point. So I thought I would share that with you. Don't panic on August 1st. Okay.
I'll give.
Yeah, I see there's.
I'll give some of my.
Yep, I see there's that question. That is about solar panels. This is something I've looked at just because I thought the freedom of being able to use both a solar connector and a solar panel is a great amount of freedom. You know, essentially at that point. Ryan, are you on the phone? Maybe you're an electrical engineer. You might.
Jay, are you frozen? Nope. There, you're moving. How's your audio?
Sorry, solar panels.
Heard that?
So I'll jump in there as well. So I actually worked for a number of years for a couple of different solar companies doing primarily grid tied stuff. I'm also super interested in this, and I think that when you start to think about a package that has the Helium hotspot as well as a 4G backhaul, you can imagine something that you can just deploy super quickly with no conduit runs, no antenna loss from the unit, et cetera, or no cable loss from the unit to the antenna. I haven't run the numbers on this in a little while, but I think you could put together you need a number of things. You need a solar module or multiple modules, depending on the total amount of power that you're going to need. You're going to need a charge controller and you're going to need a battery. There's no way around that. It's probably not a huge battery. It's probably a fairly small absorbed glass mat, or maybe now lithium battery. There's some tricks with lithium batteries charging at sub-zero temperatures, but it's doable, you know, with the right protocols, et cetera. It's probably going to add more than the cost of the hotspot, but it might be significantly less than running conduit or running power, especially if you're hiring a contractor to just do that one job. So if anybody else is seriously interested in doing that, I'd be interested in maybe kind of revisiting that. And then I'll also just add that I'm on the wait list for Starlink internet. And I think what I'm going to try to do is have a single combined redundant solar powered system that's kind of delivering the internet to the house and also connecting to the Helium network right adjacent to that, and then put all that on a huge mast. So
Sorry, my computer seems to be running slow, but just something like this is probably overkill, but there are systems out there providing 12 volts continuously as a full system. And that's what I was thinking of as, you just buy this, even if it's $800 or $1,000, if
That's
anywhere near where they are, it pays for itself very quickly if you can deploy in a good location where you otherwise couldn't.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that you've got to look at it. New England is not the worst place in the world solar wise. We're lucky, throughout Connecticut, there's not any super foggy places. The long winter nights around December, January are problematic because there's just less opportunity to solar charge. So you've got to scale the system for the longest, worst nights, because what you really don't want is for this thing to drop out, right? For hours or days at a time. You want it to be continuously connected. Otherwise, I think your score suffers and you miss out the opportunity to earn. Usually, if you're already located well vertically, you're also going to be good solar availability, but those two things aren't necessarily totally connected. In other words, you could have some tree cover or building directly to the south that occludes your solar access, and that takes a pretty big hit typically. Once you're talking about an off-grid system or a battery backup system, you really need that whole window of solar to the south and southeast, south and southwest. So no shade whatsoever. And then there's more mundane stuff like keeping it clean, et cetera, which, this has all been thought of before. It's not new information.
It'd be good to make sure your antenna is above the solar panel and put the receiving unit behind the solar panel where it will be mostly in the shade. So it's not going to get roasted by the sun. So a nice little setup there would work. I'd like to ask, we're connecting our hotspot via an internet cable down to our home router. Is anybody here connecting their hotspot to their router wirelessly?
I am.
I
and
am.
It's up on the tower without an extender. I mean, that's like, it's probably 200 feet away from a Netgear or Nighthawk or whatever.
Both MakeHaven and my personal are wireless.
So all you need is power up there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Rich, like my thing gets 1 bar, and it's always like 1 bar of Wi-Fi from what I can tell when I look at the router. So it's barely connected and it's fine.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. That's a good point. That really makes it simple to put it on the roof.
And I think
you will not be able to connect to your 5G, I don't think, unless someone's found a way around that.
The power over Ethernet is also a good option, because then you're just running one cable and you don't have the requirements of conduit and other sorts of things, because it's not the same voltage. But I want to make sure that we got to Brenda's question. And if anybody else has questions or topics, they want to make sure, which is wallets. Brenda, what is it about wallets that you wanted us to make clear?
Well, hey, JR, before we ask that, I wanted to point out one thing that Rich and Brenda said that I think is inaccurate, and I just want to know. As long as you have your words and you lose your phone, you should be fine. You can just load the app on another phone and put your words in, correct?
That is correct. Never share your words. Your words are just, and you might just be doing this to prompt me, but yeah, your words are.
No, I wasn't. Rich pointed out that if he lost his phone, he was screwed, and I don't know if that's the impetus, the safety impetus here. I mean, I think others who know more than me will get into Brenda's point about diversifying, but I just wanted to clear up that point because I did hear that.
If you post a picture to Twitter of your 12 words, you lose all your money, even if you have your phone or not. If you lose your phone and it's not sitting there open to the app already with the fingerprint unlocked, where they can easily transfer, and even then I think they have to do their fingerprint again. So no, if you lose your phone, you don't lose it. If you lose your 12 words, it's over. And that's the
and really, really over, not like, oh, it's a pain in the butt to call somebody to get it back. It's over.
Yeah, it's over. It has been destroyed, lost. Yeah.
Well, so then maybe, Brenda, maybe we don't have to worry about keeping all your HNT tokens in the Helium app. Brenda was
All you have to do is let me know your 12 words and I'll watch out for them.
No, this is practice.
I think but the question about diversifying was interesting, right? Because to the point you just made, Rich, I mean, there's a potential security issue with the Helium app being hacked, right? So like you, I guess in theory, could store it in a couple different places so that one hack did not take down. Is that an accurate statement, JR, or someone else who knows more about this?
Well, I'm not qualified.
I mean, in theory, I assume the Helium app is vulnerable.
Oh,
I would suspect that the likelihood of Helium and the sort of attention that's gone to it being vulnerable is lower than the risk that's introduced as you start transferring and bringing in new wallets. So I suppose it really has to be an amount where you feel like if I lose it, I have to diversify. So I wouldn't move out of my Helium wallet for that reason, but that's my own personal risk assessment. I did diversify from Helium, so I sold at $4 when it was like, oh my gosh, $4.
You
So I sold thousands of dollars and just bought other cryptocurrency because I figured I still wanted to stay in cryptocurrency but diversify. Turns out that was a bad choice at that point, but well, it maybe wasn't a bad choice. It turned out to not have the best result. But we'll see.
If you left it in there.
Well, exactly. Helium did performed amazingly, but cryptocurrency in general, I think so if you could move some to your Coinbase wallet, now you have it in two wallets, right? You could buy some Ethereum or something else. I would be the hardware wallets are a thing where you have a little USB port that plugs in and you've loaded the data on there. I would make sure those also should have a printout, which with Bitcoin, where you literally print out your hash, so that if you lose there are ways to lose hardware wallets. So I mean, there's a lot of tragedies out there, and
there are. And quickly, I'll just say that the final sort of ironclad solution is something called a cold wallet, which is there are ways to. Back in the early days of Bitcoin, and still are, I'm sure, you can run a live distribution of Linux on a machine that's air gapped, and basically create a wallet that's never seen the internet. And it sort of sounds counterintuitive, but it works out that you have a fully secured wallet where there's no chance of somebody observing the keys, and then you can add value to that wallet, right? You can send cryptocurrency to the wallet. And if the day comes where you'd like to move it out of that wallet, obviously you have to start connecting it to the internet, so to speak. But otherwise, it's completely secure. Now, obviously, you've got a piece of paper or something. Now you're back to the question of like, bank security box, safe deposit box, et cetera, fireproof safe. Ultimately, it's just sort of your appetite for risk.
Has everybody here moved HNT out of their app and actually put dollars in the bank account and gone through that whole process? Brenda has a worksheet that she studied it, she documented it. It works. You have to do this, do that, do this, do this, do this. There's far too many things to do as far as I'm concerned, but she knows how to do it. And so she actually put. We just wanted to make sure while it was doing so well that, let's get some of the money out just in case, and we took about $3,000 out. We only put 400 in, and then there's many, many more grands up there in the Helium app storing the holding on to the Helium tokens, but you can move those tokens into in Coinbase, and there's still, if the value goes up, they'll go up in Coinbase. It's once you put it in a wallet, it's still tied to the day's value of Helium. It's really pretty cool.
Though Coinbase doesn't yet support Helium. So when I moved it to Coinbase, I converted it to Ethereum. So Coinbase will show you the value, but they won't yet hold on to it.
Right.
They haven't built in that compatibility.
Yeah,
And
so we were talking about its value in Bitcoin. So we have a bunch of Bitcoin in Coinbase, which really we had transferred Helium indirectly into Coinbase, and there it sits as Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I've read that we shouldn't really be keeping anything in Coinbase unless you just have it there to sell, because Coinbase, it's like when with Helium, we have like our keys, but Coinbase has our keys if we have it in Coinbase, like that. So it's supposed to be less secure to be in there. So even if the Helium app is secure, what about the Bitcoin that got into Coinbase? Shouldn't I be putting that in some kind of wallet? You know,
the exchanges. I won't get into the full pain of losing money on an exchange, but a wallet is not an exchange. An exchange is not a wallet, right? Like if it's in a wallet and you've got the cryptographic key, you are really the owner of that cryptocurrency. If you've transferred value to an exchange and you're watching and you're daily trading it, you don't have that cryptocurrency. You have an account, which is just a value stored on an Excel sheet in their system. They've gotten better probably since Mt. Gox, but the ultimate loss is to have $50,000 or $100,000 of Bitcoin one morning, and then the next morning you have nothing. That's a drag. So beware of exchanges.
Brenda, you're
muted. It's a
muted.
wallet too, right?
so I should take my Bitcoin out of Coinbase and put it into some kind of wallet. You're talking about this cold wallet, or
not a bad idea I mean, if you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, it's not a bad idea to have a cold wallet set up.
okay.
Yeah, we better look into that.
At the same time, I'd say that, Coinbase is not a fly-by-night company. They are a major institution, which is on par with or bigger than many banks. And so you are, the crypto spirit is you own it yourself. You have the cryptography. You're doing as Joe says. You're not guaranteed. Coinbase is not FDIC insured, as far as I know. So if they go out of business, you're out of luck. I still think that you're not doing an incredibly risky thing. There's many more risky companies in crypto than Coinbase. They're kind of the gold standard, and I wouldn't be filled with fear by using them.
I agree with that to an extent, but I think that it's also the case that if you're not running, day trading basically, where you want to be able to at a moment's notice push from one to another, then the benefit is really just having the ease of access to convert to another currency or cryptocurrency or dollars or yen or what. The downside is, even though it's a probably vanishingly small chance, you get hacked or they get hacked, and then you'll be in good company, but you'll still be miserable in good company. So
the next question people had is about taxes. Ben, do you want to say, if you're unmuted, do you want to say what you're thinking?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to, we had the conversation prior to tax season. We're in tax season now. I'm curious, I could give my insights as to what's happened so far in my experience. I don't know if other people have gotten any insights as they've talked to accountants or went to file taxes on their earnings. So,
did you want to share your insights, Ben, or I can?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I'm not so. The thread that went around shared the tax calculator, the open source tax calculator for Helium, or earnings calculator, historical earnings calculator, for the sake of reporting taxes. It was super helpful. I don't have the link handy, but effectively, this guy's interpretation of the IRS code that looks at cryptocurrency, and it's also now my interpretation, is that you are supposed to pay income tax on the earning or the value of each individual token at the time you earn it. You're also, of course, supposed to pay capital gains, long-term or short-term, on the gain from that point, that jump-off point where you earn the token to when you exit. But in my particular case, I have not sold any, so I'm just interested in, for my 2020 taxes, what the total value of all of the tokens I earned, which it was impressive to watch the CSV export. It's like 5,000 rows or something. So you definitely will want to use a tool to do this. But it took the value of those 5,000 tokens at the time it was earned. And I will pay income tax on the tokens. One thing I will say is that I use a senior accountant at Markham. They know a lot about filing taxes. There are people there that know about crypto. My accountant did not. And one thing she pointed out to me is that I'll be the first of her clients to, and it may just be who her clients are, actually check the box on the IRS return that says I am the holder of a crypto bank account. And she did say to me, and this sucks, this will be a red flag for the IRS, and there is a chance that you'll get audited as a result of being honest about your earnings, which feels like a disincentive to actually check the box. I'm not discouraging anyone from doing that, but that was a little nugget of insight that I've learned post our thread, that if you check the box and you're going to declare earnings on crypto, you may get audited. So that would be annoying. I don't know if anyone else has other.
Well, I would just like to say that I know there's a question of whether to file as self-employed with a Schedule C and SE, or to file it just as like other income. And I guess you could do it either way. I was reading all this advice about it. I'd like to file as self-employed because I was a federal employee and I don't have that much Social Security. So I'd like to increase my Social Security, but that might not apply to most people if you don't have any 0 years like I do, that it might not matter that much. But anyway, and it was very unclear as to what it is. And I read something with like 10 questions. If you answer 5 of them or more, you're self-employed, and I could only answer 5. And I thought, okay, I win 5. But it was so close. So I don't really know, what other people are doing as far as self-employed or
Hobby.
Or hobby. Yeah, that was hobby income rather than a business or hobby, because it's so new. And I used to have to make decisions about business or hobby for Social Security. That's where I worked. But
Right.
I didn't make any decisions about crypto because it didn't exist. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that, that's going to all boil down to personal circumstances, whether you're, paying Social Security on a salary somewhere else, or unemployment, or, the other things that go along with taxes. So I don't have it, not an accountant. That's why I use one. But that she did not, I'm not, I didn't incorporate or anything on this, for the sake of the Helium, and there was no suggestion to do that.
And so a question in the chat from Nick was, does anyone feel strongly about a particular wallet that supports Helium? So you can't move it into Coinbase. And Coinbase, as we talked about, isn't a real wallet that's yours. It's their wallet. Is there one folks know of that they use that they recommend?
No, if you're not in Connecticut, I know we have at least one or two people on the line that are not in Connecticut. You can use Binance. There's only like 3 states in the country that don't allow for Binance, but Binance is definitely a trusted.
So is Binance a wallet?
I guess, is that an exchange and not a wallet?
Yeah, I believe so, because what you're doing is you're trusting them as the third party rather than holding on to the key.
But that's the same with Coinbase.
Was
If you
that?
remember nothing else that I said.
Right. No, I remembered it, Joe, but isn't that the same as Coinbase? JR used Coinbase as a reference. That's why. Aren't they both exchanges? They're not wallets.
Yeah, I believe they're both exchanges.
Like if you lose your password, somebody in their staff can go get it. It's a wallet. If you lose the password, it's gone. No, a supercomputer can't get to it. So it's, you are taking more on yourself. And I don't know, Joe, do you have a wallet provider you use? I used MetaMask as a wallet for something else because it was required for a particular type of cryptocurrency. I wouldn't say that I particularly loved the experience, but MetaMask is one wallet that works in your browser, and you'll have to do your own due diligence on whether that one would be appropriate for you. I don't think it supports Helium. It may not support Helium. I'd have to check.
So to answer your question, at this moment, the only HNT of which I am steward is Makerspace CTs, and that resides in the wallet app, which I keep secure. So I haven't moved it to any third party, etc. I have.
You mean the proprietary Helium one, right, Joe?
Yeah, just their own app.
Yeah. So just checking you remember. What were the 12 words, Joe?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because at one point I sort of said, well, I'm not full time at Makerspace CT anymore, so I really should, surrender this to somebody else in case I get hit by a bus. And we realized after I gave it to Drew that was the dumbest thing I could do, because now, like if you're a third party and the HNT in that account moves, you don't know who did it, right? It was either me or Drew, whereas before it was definitely me. So we kind of screwed that up, but fortunately it's a group that everybody gets along pretty well, and nobody's anticipating a great HNT heist. But just be smart about it with wallets and 12 words. You really don't want to share this with anybody but like your spouse, and even then maybe not. So
you can't trust your spouse. Who can?
I can't wait to tweet this recording, JR.
Hey, I have a question. Is everybody here accessing their HNT or their Helium app via a smartphone? Is anybody doing it all on a computer? Can you manipulate your Helium?
Pretty much all smartphone. You got to be in the app.
I've been playing around with I've been playing around with setting up a Helium validator, and there are command line tools for Helium wallets. If you go to the GitHub, there's basically a Helium wallet there, and you can create a wallet which is a command line wallet, right? So that would, and I've not actually pushed real Helium over it, although I have pushed the testnet Helium over it. So my presumption is, untested, that you'd be able to manipulate Helium with it. So if you wanted to do, I think it was, Joe was talking about air-gapped Raspberry Pi for storing your Helium. If you wanted to do that level of custody, you could probably basically install Raspberry Pi, set up the Helium command line wallet, do your manipulation, or get your address, and then basically disconnect that, tape over the socket, and then that's your air gap machine. And then you could probably do some very similar things to Bitcoin in terms of storage. But to answer the question, there's counterparty risk of storing it in an exchange, but there's also, you mess it up because you don't know what you're doing risk, right, with storing it yourself. And I think the early people in the space are very technically capable and less likely to blow their foot off in their own storage, but it's not a given. And as your lack of knowledge about this increases, or lack of knowledge decreases, you have to rely on other tools. And as you rely on other tools, you increase your risk that you mess up the tool, or the more complex tool has its own risk baked into it. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's an excellent assessment. I mean, the other way you can look at this is, if you want to do something a little unusual or outside your comfort limit, start with a small amount, right? Like most of these things that it's not like a lot of commercial finance accounts where you've got a cost threshold associated with creating an account or a wallet, et cetera. You can do that basically for free. So spin one up, put the equivalent of $1 in it or something like that, and 0.1 HNT or something like that. You'll get the entire experience. You'll gain some confidence, and then you can start talking about doing bigger moves. Putting, if you are interested in sort of keeping thousands of HNT or tens of thousands of HNT secure, you'll feel better about it if you've done it once with 1 or 0.1.
Yeah, that concerning wallets, that makes a great deal of sense. But one of the things we're concerned right now is that right now we do everything with Helium through one of our smartphones, and we're looking at getting a new smartphone. This smartphone is 6 years old, and we're due for a brand new one. How do we move everything from the old smartphone to the new smartphone? Has anybody done that?
Yeah,
they typically make
Rich, I think that's just a matter of logging in with those same words we were talking about. You're going to re-download the app, you're going to put the words in, and it'll all be there.
What about the old
There's
phone?
also migration tools in a lot of cases. You can export and import. It's a lot like moving from one phone to another. But the other thing I was going to mention briefly is I know I haven't tried this, but I know that this has been done before, which is you can run essentially an Android emulator in Linux. So if you want to spin up a sort of a virtual Android phone on a x86 machine or other processor machine, you could sort of have a emulated Android wallet.
So
I think in terms of the old phone, Rich, you're going to wipe the phone of all your data, and this data the login is, I think, the only data that's stored locally, and that would be wiped.
And that's a good point, by the way, is once you get ready to decommission something like that, you want to either do a serious, factory reset, RAM refresh, or if you really want to, if it was a wallet that had tens of thousands or $100,000 on it, I would seriously consider just smashing the phone and like hitting the memory chips with a hammer just to be extra double safe.
I mean, one thing you could do, and this is like, look, don't listen to me, asterisks everywhere. If you lose everything, you lose everything. But if you had your old wallet and you got a new wallet and if you've got your old phone, you could re-enter your codes into your new phone, and then it would stop. You would light up, and you could manipulate these things and send them backwards and forwards to check you had control of that. That's one way of doing it. And then you basically smash all the chips up on your old phone, right? That's one way of going about it. Another way would be you could take the asset that you had on the old phone, create a completely new wallet, and move that asset over. That way, if anybody had your old phone, even if they could get into it, there'd just be nothing on it. It'd be an empty wallet. It would also prove to you that you could manipulate and move the token somewhere else, which would mean that you actually had, the capabilities to do.
Just remember that if you've got hotspots associated with that wallet, you don't want them to continue to spill into the old wallet. You want to move the associated hotspot to a new wallet, which you can do. So
you're working on, you're interested in being a validator, or you're experimenting with what the back end would be, it sounded like. Just to explain to folks, the validator, we mentioned it in brief, but it's the idea you're seeing in a lot of crypto, which is proof of stake, where you're getting these hubs that have to put a stake in. They have to put a certain amount of HNT up front, and that proves that they're a committed person. And then they're allowed to provide a function. So you typically, a lot of folks are using like the Amazon cloud, and you would create a instance where you are doing services. So you're helping manage some of these transactions. You're playing part of the consensus or other such functions. And you get a section, you get a portion of the reward pool for those services. And that's at least how I understand it. It's a somewhat cursory understanding. Stephen, it sounds like you've been explaining. Is that correct? And do you have a better understanding of what validators are doing and how that's set up?
Yeah. So my look, it's like we're all like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? So, and I'm probably a half an eyed person, I guess, on this. So the units themselves currently have everything on them so that they can be elected a validator, which means that they can, I believe, extend the blockchain, right? And the problem with that, though, is scalability. As you get more units, there's the code to update those, and the need of every unit is quite extensive, right? So that's why they're migrating to a model with separating out these capabilities so that you have like a heterogeneous set of devices that do different things in the network, but you still have a distributed system. So this is what they're experimenting with at the moment. There's a test net which people can experiment being a validator. Now, when this gets rolled out to the real system, then you would need to stake 10,000 HNT in order to be a validator. And then you will earn part of the pool of rewards for them. But it means that rolling forward, the software on each of the miners is less complex. So it makes it easier to roll out cheaper, lightweight units. And as importantly, as the network scales, you don't have a throughput problem.
Hey,
Doesn't it also mean that the consensus groups go away in the future? The current consensus groups?
The current mode where you can be elected to be a consensus node will disappear.
Right. So I think that's a good point, because we had Ryan on earlier. I think he jumped, but he said, I made X number of dollars in a day off being in a consensus group, and he's not connected to anyone. I know other folks in other parts of the country that have had similar experiences. I think that reality will go away in the future. So if you're, I don't know who's left on the call, but if you are in an area where there are no people around, in the future state, there will be no real way to earn money outside of actually connecting to another device or transferring data, I guess, from a local IoT device.
If a Helium gateway falls in the woods, does it make any signal?
Does it?
It depends if there are 6 more around it.
So a question was, how do you join a consensus group? And right now, the answer is randomly. So by being a good character in the network, by having good scores, I think that it increases your chance of being selected. John's shaking his head. No, John,
right. Yeah, you have a higher probability.
They changed that. They changed that. They just got rid of the scores altogether because they were kind of arbitrary, and it's completely random.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so things do keep changing, and maybe we should be wrapping up, but it's worth saying we're talking about these changes and how do these changes happen. I've seen them called the hips, and maybe John, I think you're probably up to date on this. And do we get to, I haven't investigated this much. How do people get to vote? Do we get to vote because we hold HNT? How do you express it? What's the method in which these regulations or changes come out?
I don't know the governance model. I will say that Helium does not control how everything is run, doesn't control how the system is designed. Anybody can write up a change, propose a change to the system. These are called Helium improvement proposals, or HIPs or HIPs. There, you can find them on GitHub, the helium.com website, links to them. They get discussed, they get their own channel on Discord for discussion, but how they get approved, I don't know.
Does anyone know?
I think the last Wednesday of every month, they do like HIP discussions that you can join in on, and people can ask questions or add, comments, or so there is some meeting focused on that. And There is a way to vote because I feel like I voted for HIP 17, 15, and 17, but I can't remember how that happened. It popped up as a message, I think, on Discord to cast your vote, but.
Yeah, so my impression, although I've never investigated or expressed it, is you get to vote based on the amount of HNT you hold, but I would need to, we need to check that. So that is, I guess, a question for the future. We should be, we've covered a good amount of topic here and we're at a good point in time. If there's no burning questions, I think I'll, yeah, John.
Ben mentioned the tool to document your HNT earnings because you are going to need this when you file taxes this year. And I put the link in the chat. It's at 8:40 p.m. I mean, if you haven't done that yet, go ahead. It's like 3 or 4 clicks. You'll download a table with columns that say how much you earned, when you earned it, and what the value of HNT was there, and you're going to need that for your taxes. So I'd grab that
and
link.
I just I exported to CSV, brought it into a Google sheet, and then just did the sum.
Yeah,
which was easy. And I think probably everyone knows at this point. I was on the phone with my accountant when this was announced. I haven't seen it in the news, but I guess filing deadline has been extended this year because of COVID, so it is not April 15th anymore.
So I could delay more.
Something to that.
That's what I need.
I wanted to.
Yep.
I wanted to offer some totally unsolicited investment advice, and this is total. I mean, just because we were talking about it before.
Yeah, sure. I mean, disclaim it. Do it.
I guess it's not advice as much as my line of thinking about helium. So I'll say first of all, I would say I am long on helium, meaning that I plan on riding out the various storms. I have not calculated some exit at some point of exit, but you should do that, I think, as an investor in anything. So that's my mistake. For me, helium is in the high risk side of how I think about investing. And things that are low risk, this is high risk. I would just give you guidance that if it means something to you and will change your life at this point, you should considering taking some part of it off the table. I've heard JR joking about saying it was a bad decision to take something off the table. I don't, if you're gambling, maybe, and if the goal is just to make the most amount of money, yes. But at the end of the day, everyone in this network, to John's point, has earned what I would consider real money. And if it impacts your life and it would really hurt to lose it, you should, think seriously about that. In moving some of it out. The reason I think I'm long on helium is because, look, there is no way that the company, the current value in terms of data that is being transferred is $700 million right now, right? But that is the current market cap for the network. But of course, that's true of most of the stock market right now. So I don't know that there's a safe place where the earnings of the company are actually rationalized by the share value these days. So I think then you have to look at where this thing is in its life cycle, to Joe's point. And it seems pretty clear from all the investors who have written about helium, and you look at the backlogs of RAC, that they've gone 100x in terms of the number of units in 6 months, and they'll go from 25 or whatever it is, 30,000 units right now to 100,000 by end of year at the minimum. That's going to be a really big. Helium has a very, very small. They get very small news bites right now, and the price spikes. 100,000. It's the fastest growing mesh network in the world. 100,000 units by year end is kind of unfathomable. That's a really big story, and stock, which this effectively is in the network, will move. Based on the New York Times article that happens around this, right? I think where previous cryptocurrencies moved when they got listed on Coinbase or something like that. That's kind of fizzled the Coinbase hype. But again, just speaking from where I'm thinking about it, every time this thing gets in an email newsletter on cryptocurrency, it gets a spike. But you can imagine the difference between Helium and most cryptos is that everyone understands what the internet is, right? And they are now positing to be talking about distributing the internet differently, and that's a really big story, whether they can pull it off or not. So if you want to be like taking a risk in something that's highly speculative and has a potentially large upside, I think Helium's about as good as it gets. And if you're holding HNT right now, you should probably feel pretty lucky that it appears you're on the early side of a curve. I mean, this thing is not worth $1 billion yet in market cap, but it is in the top 100, or it's been teetering in and out of the top 100 of cryptocurrencies, which within 9 months of launching as a token. So that's my why it's long. So
I agree. I agree with all that. I also think it's worth pointing out that many of the other cryptocurrencies have differences, some subtle, some less subtle, but this one's really fundamentally different. And I think that differentiation is what would cause it to stand out from somebody that's interested in getting into crypto and saying, well, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin because everybody does, and then maybe Ethereum because that's next runner up, and then what else is out there? And you start to look at okay, someone says theirs is green and it's it won't be carbon intensive, etc. HNT's got something different behind it, and yeah, I completely agree.
And is also green, right? Like comparably to Bitcoin and Ethereum, it is way lower energy cost.
It should be way lower. And the other thing is, talking about that upper limit, go look at what the telecom industry is. This isn't ones of billions out there. This is billions and billions and billions and billions. And so, stacked next to that, it starts to look like a very, very feasible thing to have long legs. So yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and I'll jump
let me
in.
just pop in with this notion though. We're thinking about, another data highway that's owned by the people, where all the cell towers are our little Helium hotspots, right? And how wonderful. And I'm going to rain on the parade. But this highway only allows motorcycles on it. No major trucks are going to be traversing this data highway. It's all small packets. It's not
currently
file transfer. It's not.
Yeah, but there's a HIP that's specifically focused around enabling cell phone communication, 5G.
Yeah.
And there's a guy called Boris from Freedom Fi who's been engaging on that. So the point there is IoT market is about a $2 billion market right now, which by 2027 will be something like an $80 billion market. LoRaWAN is a subset of that. So that doesn't necessarily mean you can compare the market cap of Helium tokens right now to that, but it definitely gives you kind of 10x room at least, there. I mean, these are all like asterisks everywhere, right? And then, but if you did say that Helium is really, once it has that network effect, then you can roll on any other telecommunications to that same model. So Wi-Fi, for example, cell phone. If you look at the market cap, I just pulled it up here, the market cap of all telecommunication networks is $2 trillion, right? Now, doesn't mean you're going to take on all of that 2 trillion, but we're talking many orders of magnitude about where it is right now. Now, long run, will it be that Helium units are best deployed by individuals, or will it be cell phone tower owners who deploy Helium? I think that's an open question. But that's
in any case, you're not going to do voice communication over Helium or video communication.
No,
well,
you're
right
not.
Now, you're not going to do it over the LoRaWAN IoT frequency.
But that infrastructure.
What we're talking about here is you've got one frequency allocation, which is unlicensed spectrum, which this IoT communicates over. There's other licensed spectrums, and that means you can buy slice of license from Google, right, or another provider, something called CBRS, it's in band radio service, and then you can basically resell that. You can then have other carriers use that. But without getting into all the weeds, the point is there's other frequency spectrums that the Helium token can support.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, what I'm thinking is that the IoT network right now is just proof of concept, and Helium is using it to show that a decentralized communications network is a viable idea. And their real goal, their moonshot, is to do 5G with this. And you're right, it's not going to happen with these hotspots, but you're just going to build a different hotspot that, instead of having a LoRa chip in it, has a 5G chip in it. And at that point, Helium does to telecommunications what Amazon has done to retail.
Well, still, when you get down to it, Helium is very limited into the number of bits that can be transmitted at a given time. It's just short communications.
Yeah, I think
you might move the technology to, there's 2 other bands that are free to be used without licensing. This one at 915 megahertz is just one of them. There are 2 more bands that can be operating, but this is the better one because it's the lower frequency. It's going to have more penetration. It's going to go longer distances. But I don't see that. I don't know how you would ever move this 915 megahertz spread spectrum Helium network that's all over the country to a higher band. Major.
Rich, I think the point is that you don't move the hardware, you move the wetware. It's this conversation, right? It's all of us that have seen the benefit of this.
Right.
This
the token
validation
economics
model, right? Right.
The token economics concept can be supported by anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't, as long as that's standardized and agreed upon.
But it would no longer be Helium, right? It would be something else.
Well, I mean, there's a question if they use the same token, right? If they use a different token, then
it's
then
true
yes,
that what would be sneaky would be to sort of prove all the economics and some of the stuff with something called HNT, and then sneak off over here and create, Xenon or whatever, right? You could do that.
However, these guys also hold Helium, so that would be unlikely.
Exactly.
They have incentive, and so do their investors, right? They're all capitalists at the end of the day, so that's probably.
So watch what they're doing, but assume that your money moves with theirs.
Okay, one last quick question. Now this is really short. It's won't take up much time at all. Have we decided that all the new Helium devices no longer have a GPS radio in them? They don't need it anymore?
As I was looking at the other party hotspots, they had one. They had one that was open, right? And it had a white square in it. And I think GPS chips look like white squares. I don't know. I haven't opened too many of these things.
Yeah, there was a place to plug it in, and a place to plug in the 915 megahertz transceiver too. So, but the new, anyone have a new hotspot and it does not have a GPS in it? Is that why the price is down so low? I mean, down to 250 instead of what was 400?
I think that's economies of scale. I think Helium just built small batches and had to pay more for them.
Yeah, the Cal chips don't come with a GPS antenna.
Okay. Didn't somebody say? Didn't somebody say that the GPS function of these Heliums is no longer necessary for the Helium hotspot to work?
I think that's right.
I think there's also the density of the network. Like now that we are verifying from each other, they can use the triangulation to verify against each other, is my suspicion. And GPS is not hard to fake on a device. And so I think that there's examples of some of these scam situations where folks took advantage of just feeding it fake GPS data. And so the GPS doesn't actually provide much verification, is my unknowledgeable take. So I just wanted to put a bow on this. We don't need to kick anybody out, but I think I want to free people who were feeling that they didn't want to miss any of the formal part of the meetup. And we have been now meeting for 2 hours. And so we should let folks go. So thank you everyone so much for coming out to this this meetup. We certainly learned a lot. I think in I don't know what the timing is, but as more things happen, there's a lot that's happened since our last meetup. Let's do another one. Let's talk about it. Perhaps we'll even be able to meet up in person, or many of us will be able to meet up in person who are in the continental US. And that'll be a lot of fun. So that I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm just wrapping up the formal event. And I think thank you everyone for coming and chatting, and please continue.